So, Death Stranding, what is it? I'll tell you. It's Sam Porter Bridges with Jenga playing Tetris in the Breath of the Wild world. Oh, and including a Tamagotchi minigame. Roll the titles.
Welcome to the virtual towers of Binary Arcadia, where the games go on long into the night. Hi Barcadians, you're joining Rich and I today for another Death Stranding analysis, and this specifically focuses on the trailers we saw dropped at Tokyo Game Show 2019. So we're going to do this in a slightly different way to what we normally would. For the most part, it's just because, well, what was it, Rich? An hour and 20 minutes of trailers we've got.
Yeah, probably that. Yeah, and plus the amount of information we need to get through here means we can't do 700 flip chart pages. So we've more bullet pointed things here just because of the sheer amount of information there is going on here.
And again, we'd love to do our blow-by-blow visual analysis of the trailer, but put it this way, that 9-minute trailer we saw a few months back, Rich, was it 2 hours in the end?
Yeah, ended up 2 hours, so yeah, I would not like to know what this would end up with. So I think this is a better way of doing it. We'll probably reference some visual clues on screen from the trailers, so if you're not sure what we're talking about, it gives you a little bit of a reference. And then before we start, I'd just like to say a huge thanks to Tabz on this one, because I've been away this week, so I've not been able to be too involved in the research on this one. So big thanks to Tabz for keeping the BA end up.
Oh, bless you, mate. No worries. Well, and by extension, I should say a big thanks. We'll come to some shout outs later, but I think Aaron Pingle, a subscriber of the channel, who put me on to an early English subtitled version of the trailer. And we'll flash the channel name up later as well, just to give them a shout out. But that enabled me to kind of get stuck into the research early and put it through the analysis machine and get it sorted for today's video. But
and definitely worth a watch if you can't, like us, you can't speak or read Japanese. So
yes,
well worth a watch.
Well, IGN now have actually released their own, which I would say is perhaps slightly more accurate than the one I used.
Okay, cool.
That's very much an easy accessible source, and they've got both trailers as well.
Cool.
But yeah, I mean, it definitely reveals a lot more, doesn't it, Rich? I think we've both had a look through these Japanese translations, and it's crazy how much.
It's incredible, really. It's interesting the context of everything suddenly comes into focus with the translation of what's being said. So that's really required. So yeah, prepare for information overload, and we'll see you at the flip chart. So you join us at the flip chart. You can see what we've got is a series of headings, and we're going to literally talk in depth about each thing with what we've seen through the trailers. So first heading is Chiral Network and Printer. Right, do you want to set us off, Tabz?
Yeah, will do. I mean, just to say, guys, these headings aren't in any particular order. They've just been arbitrarily put together by me in a bit of a rush, so don't take anything from that. So yeah, the Chiral Network we know now is mostly related to data communication. So in the Death Stranding world, pre-Sam and Amelie originally trying to set up and activate this Chiral Network, only basic data communications are currently available. And the idea is, I think it was just messaged, and this might be a bit janky in terms of translation, but super large capacity, zero time network is the ultimate goal. So essentially what they're saying is that you can have access instantaneously to massive amounts of data. So not just present data as well, but there's also a suggestion that it can connect to the past. and that's go on.
And we've actually we've seen that in the Deadman trailer. He says we don't know enough about BBs yet. Until we connect the chiral network further, we can get back that information. So there's actually supporting evidence to say that the data that was in the past, and for some reason, we'll get it back, which will allow us to understand the BBs more.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't know how deep this goes. I mean, have we got some storage of data? But there's literally, in the translation, it says 4.6 billion years of Earth's history and knowledge will be accessible once the chiral network's up and running, as well as any knowledge from after the Death Stranding occurred, and will be reconnected to this. So, I mean, whether you just take that in so far as, you know, it's just data that we've kind of, put in a giant hard drive somewhere. Yeah, just while we've been alive, and, you know, history and all those subjects, it's just stored on a big hard drive or a satellite somewhere, and that's what we're getting the chiral networks connecting to. Or whether there's something a bit more, I don't know, monumental to it. It's almost a suggestion that the chiral network is the key to reconnecting, you know, space-time and whatever's happened, you know, with the Death Stranding kind of fragmenting reality. So that did make me think about as well. We've seen, haven't we, Rich, World War One?
Yes, it was World War One. Yes,
it was World War One, I think, wasn't it? Kind of represented.
I think it's confirmed by the tanks that we used.
Yeah, that's right.
In that video, that's how we know it's World War One.
And we've seen the soldiers and the references to that. So,
yeah.
You know, I'm almost thinking, are we going to see a number of different historical tableaus, if you like, that document our entire history? You know, could we see ridiculous things like the dinosaurs at some point? Some kind of little dinosaur world that Sam's got to navigate his way through. It really opens it up to that possibility, the way it's described, and that would be a super interesting way of Kojima kind of just doing whatever he wants and creating some really interesting scenarios.
And that you're saying there actually links nicely to the chiral printer. Because the chiral printer is something that you can apparently print anything on. It's like a 3D printer, but you can print anything, peoples, animals, things from the past such as dinosaurs.
We don't know that for sure, do we? We don't know that bit for sure. We know that the chiral network basically gives you access to the chiral printer, which can print things like equipment. But there is a suggestion, and again, this could be a translation issue, but that you can print almost anything, which is why, as you say there, Rich, you know, can we perhaps print people, animals?
Yeah.
But you do need materials to kind of, I don't know, I suppose it's a bit like the DeLorean in Back to the Future, and when it gets that conversion, you have to put rubbish into it to kind of run it. So you have to put resources into this printer to then print stuff. But yeah, seemingly there's a suggestion that you can print almost anything, because I think Sam actually says there's a line where he says, oh yeah, but we shouldn't print, we should only print we shouldn't print original things which have souls. You know, almost suggesting, well, you can do it if you wanted to, you know, but we shouldn't do that morally because it's wrong. So yeah, there really is, again, it's a bit of an open door on this chiral printer.
And I think the chiral printer, I think that's why, if you've seen quite a lot of the weapons from all the trailers, they're normally strapped on the back. A lot of them look very plasticky, I think. And I wonder whether that's links to the fact that they've been 3D printed. We know in the real world you can 3D print guns. And I wonder, I've thought all the way through that all of the guns look incredibly plasticky, and I think, and they don't look like, you know, your AK-47s, you know, or whatever. I wonder whether that's why they look a bit like that.
I don't know if I think you have seen it, Rich. District 9, do you remember that film? With the aliens and in South Africa? They remind me of those sorts of guns. They're kind of like very colourful, aren't they? And they don't, like you say, they don't look like the normal materials we expect a gun to be, you know, made. So just kind of black metal. They don't have that kind of look.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I think seemingly, almost for certain, you can print equipment, you can print weapons, perhaps you can print more complex structures as well. But we do know for certain that you can't print when you're outside of the chiral network. So as you adventure through the game, if you're outside of an area that you've not yet connected, you will not be able to print equipment. So therefore, that adds an element of, once you're outside that reach, well, you're kind of on your own. You need to kind of go on.
Much like that, areas when you're outside of the chiral network, you can't print from the chiral printer, as Tabz has said, but also you can't see any map reference, so you can't see, there's like a fog of war until you've connected that chiral network. And also, areas that aren't connected to the chiral network don't have any asynchronous gameplay elements in them. So that's going to be a vital part of connecting the world if you want to play asynchronously, of course.
Absolutely. Essentially, this chiral network is, it just makes life a heck of a lot easier for Sam in terms of traversal, navigation, adventuring. Another addition is as soon as you do connect via the chiral network, you can actually see points of interest on the map.
Yeah.
It kind of, I suppose, your topographic sensor kind of, gives you some intel on the local area that's connected via the network. So again, it just makes it so much easier for Sam.
And I'm guessing if you're planning a route through an area that isn't connected to the chiral network, you're not going to get any topography of the land, you're not going to get any information, and that obviously is going to make it more difficult for you to plan what you need to take, how many boots you need, etc. You load out basically. You're
flying blind, aren't you? And that's when it
exactly.
probably really kicks in that survival mode, if you like. You're going to have to really plan, as you say, Rich, and be tentative.
And I think that will be a part of the game. I think there'll be, like, I think we saw on the trailer, the gameplay trailer, Kojima goes and connects another prepper base with the Cupid, and it literally it's just across from. So he only has to go very short space of distance outside of a connected node. But I think later on in the game you're going to see areas where you've really got quite a long trek to get to where you need to connect the chiral network, and I think that's going to create that element of, planning your resources based on where you're going, even though you don't really know where you're going, like making sure you've got enough boots because you've no way of printing more boots, etc.
Yeah, and that's cool, isn't it? You want the surprise, you want the unknown, you want that sense of adventure.
Definitely.
So yeah, it would be too easy if you could see wherever you're going and plan appropriately.
And I think that'll create a bit of a grindy aspect, certainly to start off with, until you've got a good base of chirally connected nodes.
Yeah, definitely. And you're only going to want to push so far, and then you're going to want to go home or to we'll come on to a private room, a delivery centre to recoup, rejuvenate your equipment, make sure Sam's health and stamina is looked after. So I think it is going to create a nice kind of, I suppose, operating rhythm, if you like, within the game, which I'm really looking forward to.
Definitely.
So we touched upon there, Rich, private rooms. Do you want to launch us forward?
So should we move into the next one, which is delivery centres and private rooms? So delivery centres have private rooms in, basically, and that's where you can rest and recover, and you get your most recovery from resting in a private room rather than resting out in the world.
We know that delivery terminals and depots so far, I think there's definitely one in Capital Knot City and also one in Port Knot City, because I think we see Sam, that's the one he gets to in the end.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's the one that we see right at the end that he makes the final delivery to.
And then in the next trailer, the 30-minute dump, that's literally based in that particular private room, I think, from what Kojima says.
And we see him take 4 basically large packages on his back. That's what he needed to deliver to Port Knot City. And one of the things that was in there we've seen is sperm and egg. And these are basically, which, is interesting.
Good old Kojima. Up to his normal.
Classic. These are basically used to ensure cultural and genetic diversity. Obviously, there isn't free movement of people anymore in the world. They can't move around like we get genetic diversity in the world today because people are moving around,
Freedom of movement, yeah.
Exactly, whereas in this world, you don't have that. People seemingly live underground in these basement structures, and they're only living with the people that they're living with. So I think that's an essential part of rebuilding the world and saving us from the BTs.
And it's a nice little contextual piece, isn't it, in terms of, clearly Kojima's thought this through, this whole scenario and its consequences, and he's not shying away. I mean, there's an element of it being TMI, too much information, isn't it?
But when you look at it, you think, actually, if we all do become like uber disconnected, so that, we literally just, we our immediate family and our closest friends, those are the people we see and we interact with socially. Or you could argue that that's a scenario that we're moving towards, that this will be needed to create that diversity in genetics. So I think it's interesting because he's said this game is all about connectivity, and lots of the things he's put in almost seemed like doomsday scenarios of what could happen in the world today.
Yeah, I mean, I hope not, but yeah, I suppose if the climate goes the way it goes and things become, really concerning and difficult to navigate, as in terms of the freedom movement we have at the minute, you never know, could well be. So yeah, other things about these private rooms, they can be, or what they say, they can be private, so just your own, or shared with others, so asynchronously, we understand.
It's interesting. Do we think then, say I'm visiting your private room, Tabz, you're already in your private room, does that mean then there'll be two Sams in the same private room?
No. Well, no, not that we would be able to see, I don't think.
Right, okay.
So I don't think we're ever going to appear in each other's worlds. I think it will just be the case of, so if you're in my private room, well, my colour, I've set it to a certain colour, which we'll come on to. You can actually change the colour of your room. You'll see. And I think as well, things like, if you've seen in that 30-minute trailer, Rich, you can see there's a little collectibles cabinet with models and stuff. Perhaps you would see the other person's collection. So there's an element of just seeing into their little, and also their equipment, perhaps as well. You get to see their setup, and because we see in the private rooms, there's almost like this little armory section, different.
Yes, there is. Yes,
a display of all your equipment. I think that I don't think you're actually going to see. I did think at some point you might see another Sam in some way, i.e. another player. That you can interact with, and I'd still love it if they put that in, but I don't know, from what we've seen of this private room, it alludes to what Kojima previously said at Tribeca, doesn't it, Rich? Remember he said you'll find this very special place where you just control a camera and you will see Sam in a different way and you'll smile and you'll think he's cute. Well, we see all that. You only control the camera in these private rooms.
Yeah, you do.
And Sam, as we put in our skit, Rich, at the start, there's an element of it being like a Samagotchi mode, because it's like he becomes our pet in this private room, and he's kind of interacting with us, almost like aware that he is our character and we are the player. Yeah, which is Kojima.
Classic Kojima. Meta. Anyone that's seen one of our recent ones will know, that we know Kojima's all about meta, and go back and watch that video if you're unsure what meta is.
Interestingly, Rich, he compared it. I think he, again, this might be a translation issue, but I think there's some sort of cultural game in Japan. He said it was something like a cam girl thing, or I don't know whether there's something as part of the Japanese culture, either a game or a form of entertainment, but he compared it with that. So he's clearly had a specific idea on what this would be like, and I mean, metaphorically, I don't know what he's getting at with it. That Sam can interact with you in this way. It is really cute, and for those of you who haven't seen Young Yi's video on it, it's very entertaining, isn't it, Rich? Young's loving it.
It's really interesting to know as well. Obviously, almost all of the interactions or character movements of Sam's character were mocapped, and a lot of the things that you see in the room were literally improv by is it Norman Reedus?
That's right, yeah,
so which is really interesting. I do like a bit of improv, so I like to see that.
Yeah, I mean, some people, and I'm sure they will, sling a few mud pies at Kojima to say it's a bit of an indulgent part of the game, because maybe a lot of people just won't find it necessary or enjoyable at all. But I think it's optional. I don't think you have to kind of sit there and chase all of Sam/Norman's animations. It's a nice, interesting thing they've put in.
Yeah, exactly.
And I would say the biggest thing it's probably going to do is just give us a bit more texture to this operating rhythm of the game, as we've said. So you're going to be out in this hostile world, surviving, getting on with your mission. Well, this just gives you like this little kind of haven, little respite from that, and just to kind of play around and mess around and enjoy some of the quirks that Kojima's put in there.
And in this private room, you'll be able to farm your blood, which we've seen from the trailers is one of the things we use to damage the BTs when we're in fights with them, but also some of your waste fluids, both a stand-up waste fluid and a sit-down waste fluid on the toilet.
Very diplomatically put there, Rich.
Let's leave it like that.
Number one.
We don't know exactly how that plays out at the moment. He's sort of left that a little bit ambiguous.
The blood, when the blood's extracted, it's red, and when the waste fluids are extracted, they're kind of a bluey colour, I think. Are they, Rich?
Yes, although that's only one type of waste fluid, isn't it? I think.
Yeah, I don't know. They're the only two I've seen so far. I don't know if there's even more than that. I mean, we'll come back to those later, because there is a hint towards what they actually do in terms of the blood and the waste fluids. But
what else did we see in the private rooms? We saw Fragile's umbrella was in there, and from the translation we can see that looks like that's going to form some sort of the fast travel feature. I'm not sure what we can take from this other than the fact there is a fast travel feature.
Which is good.
Yeah, absolutely, because the world looks enormous. We're still sort of holding out hope that Fragile is playable in the game. So whether this is how it plays out, I'm not sure.
The way Kojima said it was shrouded in mystery. He said kind of like, I can't go into that anymore, other than the fact that relates to fast travel. So there's obviously, he's trying to keep something under wraps there. Is it just because fast travel isn't as traditionally implemented in other games we know and love, or is it because Fragile is is another playable character? So if it's engaging with that umbrella literally swaps your play to another character, i.e. Fragile, who is in another part of the map. So in that way you are fast travelling. It's hard,
that's really interesting. That's really interesting actually, because we know that Fragile is another courier, slightly different form of courier, but we know she's a courier. And that would be really interesting if you used her at a different, because the map is absolutely enormous as we've seen, so there must be a way of furthering your progress through the map, and I wonder whether she's maybe at a different part of the map so you can fast travel to where she is, but then you're controlling her character.
Well, we also know she has her own form of dooms, and her own equipment. And our theory based previously, Rich, wasn't it, that she was playable because there was a specific cutscene where Sam is nowhere to be seen in it. So it's almost like, how, why, and in what context would we see a cutscene without Sam there?
Yeah, we basically were like, why would there be a cutscene where Sam isn't involved, other than, why would that be? So that's a good clue that she's playable. What else have we got, Tabs? So PRs contain this mini armory, and it looks like that basically holds all of your equipment. It holds all your weapons, your suits. Obviously there's different suits, so there's a suggestion that the suits have different capabilities, different powers, so to speak. So that's really interesting, and that's how you can customize all of your gear with colours. And I think, is that where you customise your loadouts as well, Tabs, or is that done in the loadout screen?
I think that's separate. I think on that one, I think on that one you can, in this kind of Resident Evil style, you can put pouches on, and then you can kind of, we've compared it with Tetris. You can kind of put them in different kind of, we'll flash up a picture just to make it easier, but I think you can customize the loadout, and as far as that there, I'm not sure if you can you know, all the balancing and the stacking of the equipment that we saw. I think he kind of does that on the fly at the delivery centre. So,
right, okay, yeah.
But you know, I'm sure there's probably multiple ways of accessing those bits
Absolutely.
and pieces. But also the BB's up there too. Can't forget that little guy.
Yes, of course, yeah.
And you can interact with him.
That's where you resync it as well, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I think it's just a nice little display thing. It's kind of be cool, won't it, to see everything you've got up to that point in the game, and will make you feel like, well, it's your own little inventory, your own little, tells its own story in a way, doesn't it? Well, I got that from there,
Definitely.
I got this from there, and it seems like there's a lot of customization in addition to really kind of
It does, yeah. Which is really cool.
So what else? We've seen, oh yeah, backpacks, talking about customization, backpacks, hats, sunglasses, and even the private rooms themselves all have colour customization options, which is, yeah, you know, a nice little thing just to, I'm playing Astral Chain at the minute, for example, and you can do that, and it's just nice to refresh the character after each mission, and it doesn't do anything to the game, you know, it doesn't matter in terms of gameplay, but it just makes you feel a little bit kind of more attached to it, I suppose. Private rooms provide access to a computer terminal as well, with various different apps on them. And interestingly, the wristband, Rich, that we've had a lot of pondering over what it actually does, what the functionality is. Well, that kind of acts as this smartwatch, if you like, which gives you similar access to this terminal in the private rooms to a number of different apps. I would guess it was probably scaled down ever so slightly. But you've got different options on this terminal, and obviously via your smartwatch. So things like you can read documents which relate to the kind of lore in the world. So for lore lovers, really want to dive deep into Death Stranding, and
You'll be all over that.
Exactly, you could probably waste hours in there. There's a mail function, so you can receive mail seemingly from in-game characters. I think that mostly relates to. So I think that can be kind of relationship stuff, that can be potentially missions, Rich. You know, oh please could you go and find this cargo? I
think what we've seen is mission results. We've seen, so like I think one of the characters says, I'll hook you up with a mail later on and let you know how you did, because some of the items they have like an expected likes or an amount of likes it thinks you're going to get. Well, it seems like your cargo has to be inspected for whatever reason to make sure that it runs to whatever likes it is, like, I guess for damage and stuff like that. But like Tabz says also, people will send you missions, can you get this to me, I need this or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. But then further to that, there's this bridge link option. So the bridge link does actually seem to give you connection to other players in the world. So whether that's just via some sort of email system, I'm not really sure. But I'm sure it said something like you can entrust cargo missions to other players that way. Don't quote me on that, but I feel like that's something that was in the English translation to do with that. But yeah,
it would make sense, wouldn't it? You know,
yeah.
And the annoying thing about this is we still don't really know whether when you're playing asynchronously, are you playing with your friends or are you playing with who it wants you to play with? We'll touch on that a bit more when we get to the asynchronous part of this, but yeah, it's interesting.
That is very interesting. I don't think we'll ever know for sure how that works, but we'll surely get a better sense of it. Yeah. And then what else? Oh, we've already touched upon it, but these collectibles, in the private room, we see some collectibles. I think there's they almost remind me of, you know, Green Army Men figures, Rich. You know, in the old Toy Story game.
Yeah, they look a lot like the figures that are seen in the briefing trailer. You know, we see all those holographic figures explaining like the story a little bit about what's happened before with Amelie and Bridget. They look a little bit like those, so yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, there's like some BTs, the gazers that are kind of just drifting around in model form. So, you know, essentially you've got a couple of shelves where you can put these collectibles. I'm not quite sure where you find them from or where you get them from, but you can display them in your own private room. Yeah. And there's even a hint that there's going to be a special mode which is unlockable when you collect enough. So I don't quite know what that means. Maybe, you know, you can have a whole separate room full of these things, which just makes a nice little addition. I was a big fan back in the day, Rich. There was a Smash Brothers game. Was it Smash Brothers Melee? And you could unlock all these trophies.
Yeah. Looked a little bit like amiibos, didn't they?
Exactly, yeah. Probably went on to birth the amiibo idea. But I really, it was a nice little way you could kind of zoom in and look at these and appreciate these 3D models.
Definitely.
And I suppose helps to kind of build the lore of the world as well. So that will be fun.
And we've seen from what Kojima said that private rooms can be damaged, I assume by other players, but potentially by BTs.
Timefall as well, I think.
Yes, Timefall, of course, yeah. Customised externally to look differently, potentially maybe protect them from the Timefall, and even destroyed. And there's this talk that possibly they can be destroyed by other players, which is a little bit worrying.
The bit I got from that, the bit I got was that you can destroy stuff, but only in your world, so it won't destroy stuff in other people's worlds.
So maybe that's if you don't look after it enough, the Timefall can destroy it.
Yeah, or maybe if you're just thinking, I've got too many private rooms or there's too much clutter, you know, I want to get this out of my world because it's annoying me. You can do that maybe. I'm really not sure. Okay. But to come back to the external customization, that also looks quite in depth, because I don't know if you recall from the video, Rich, but you see things like you can put like almost like a voiceover to play, presumably when other players get in proximity of it. Nice. So, you know, just like a little kind of sound bite to play out. But you can also put music on as well. Yeah,
which is cool.
Which is a nice little touch. And then you can put holograms of people outside too.
Oh yes, I did see that. Yes, they almost wave to you when you go out and stuff, don't they?
Yeah, which is kind of a cute little thing. So yeah, I think that's about private rooms done to death, Richard.
So moving on to one of our most anticipated features of this game, because we don't think it's been done to the extent it's been done in this game, is asynchronous gameplay. Woo! Take us away, Tabz.
Right, well there's a lot to dive into here, and we've already touched upon a couple of bits, but we've just said there you can delete stuff that other players populate in your world if you want to.
And what you're saying there is that you're connected with someone asynchronously, they've created a ladder, but the ladder is annoying you, maybe it's in your way, maybe you can't place a ladder that you want to go to a higher point, so you can delete that ladder from your world, but it still stays in their world.
Yeah, and I suppose for those people who just kind of maybe are a bit OCD, and they might get a bit of a sense of mess about the world because of all these asynchronous things bleeding into theirs. Kojima seems to suggest you can just delete it at your will. Won't delete it in their game, just in your world. I mean, this is a bit vague, so take from this what you will, but he also said there are systems to monitor player styles and progress. Now, I presume this is something to do with the matchmaking mechanic of the asynchronous gameplay. So, you know, we expressed, I think, previously, Rich, a concern about, you know, because of course you don't want later stage players kind of bleeding stuff into early game players, because that's potentially going to ruin things or make things really easy if I chuck you a motorbike from day dot. As much as fun as that would be, it would be a bit game breaking. Equally,
for instance, I'm away when this game comes out, so if we've agreed to play it together to start, but if not, you could be like, well, I'll leave Rich this bike here because he'll be able to blast through this bit and get to where I am.
Yeah,
so there are positives to that, but
yeah, that's true. You want a kind of a
just so we're clear,
zone,
we're not doing that, Tabz.
You want a Goldilocks zone. Yeah, don't worry, mate, I'll wait for you. That you want a Goldilocks zone, though, don't you? Of like enough empowerment there for it to be really useful for players to go, oh, here you go, mate, here's a boon, enjoy, but not too much that it's game breaking and you can kind of jump massive sections and kind of cheese it, as they say. So that will be very interesting, but Kojima seems confident, suffice to say. What about you, Rich? Next up?
The Chiral Network, basically, that's what enables asynchronous gameplay. So if you're outside of an area connected to the Chiral Network, then you won't be able to see or play asynchronously. So you'll need to connect that node or prepper or whatever it might be to enable the asynchronous gameplay in that area. Other equipment is shared across the network, so you can interact with other players, ropes, ladders, boxes they can drop, chiral rain protectors, the lockers / post boxes we've seen, potentially also the charging stations. All these different things can be interacted with asynchronously, basically.
And I think what we've seen and what we've been told is that if you use an object, say a ladder, it automatically gets likes, but you can also kind of give it additional likes, I suppose, out of your own pocket, if you like. And we mentioned before, Rich, it will be cool that it will give you an idea on, you know, the best possible route to something, because you've got this asynchronous kind of data intel and literal equipment bleeding through into yours, where you can be like, oh, okay, I'll take this route now. But obviously, as we say, it will only be active when the Chiral Network, you know, is up in that particular area. So in your game, it's never really going to help you progress initially. You're still going to have to brave that on your own. But it's more backtracking, I suppose, where it's going to come into its own. So it's just going to make, you know, the world a lot more easy to navigate, you know, once you've covered a particular area. Does that make sense, Rich?
Yeah, definitely, mate. Absolutely.
So yeah, where did we get up to then? We were talking about complex structures, weren't we?
Players can leave cargo behind, or they can drop cargo for other people to pick up. The only worry with that is they will degrade over time because of the Timefall. But as we saw in the video, they can be repaired with these. I think the crate repair spray or cart repair spray or something along them lines, or package repair spray. I can't remember the exact terminology for it.
It's just like a magic deodorant, though, isn't it? That he sprays on cargo and seems to heal it. It
reminds me very much of, you know, in the old days when there was a football injury. So on the football field, someone's gone down, and someone would run on and just get with, you know, like a water spray it, and they'd get up and run off. It reminded me very much of that, so I thought that was quite funny.
Yeah, definitely does seem strange, but whatever works.
Exactly.
More complex structures we're becoming aware of can also be 3D printed essentially via this chiral printer. So not just equipment, but actual, you know, almost semi-permanent structures. And we see this power bridge, don't we, Rich, specifically in the trailer, which is the kind of the biggest thing that was of interest to me. And the way that's done is essentially well, I suppose you could make one your own, but it would take a very long time because, again, you have to put resources into this 3D printer to print it. So an easy way of doing it is you can pool all of your resources with other players. And then, kind of as a little gesture, the biggest contributor to said structure is kind of made famous in a way because I think their username kind of gets stamped on the structure somewhere, which is a nice touch.
It's called a power bridge, just for context, because basically you can charge your equipment while you're on it, in essence. So it's a bridge that also has some power source to it.
And again, you can already see the potential benefits there to having that on your map. It's just going to make life a ton easier.
Well, I think this particular bridge enables you to cross water while on the bike, because it looks like you can't cross water on the bike, I think. That's what I've taken away from that. True. So.
And then I think we can see, it's pointed out, there's a safe house on the other side that's also under construction in the same area.
We'll flash this up so you can see that.
So
still of that.
It's sounding, I mean, this got me excited, Rich, and I'm excited for you as well, because I know you love a bit of base building and that sort of thing. But it does sound like you could potentially have your own little kind of base. You know, we don't know how many more of these structures you can build. But if you imagine having a little private room, a little bridge, shelter, you know, locker, it's just you'd have your own little kind of private habitat somewhere, and obviously created with other players, which is just so cool. Do you want to move us on?
Yep. So You saw in the trailer that he is playing, at one point he fights one of the BTs, and while he's fighting that, you see these white like apparitions of Sam come up, and like they like throw things at him, such items, potentially weapons, and you can basically use the comms button to call for help during battles, and these Sam like white figures come up and try and help you out basically. So that's almost like a simplifier, you would say, Tabz, or I guess it's a way of ensuring that if you go to somewhere and you're unprepared for what you find, it's a way of ensuring that there is a way of getting around that.
Yeah, that's very similar to this Dark Souls mechanic, because I think in those games, or definitely in Bloodborne, you could literally ask for another person's help during certain battles, and I think they would literally kind of merge into your world and help you fight whatever you're up against. This comms button, by the way, is just like seemingly a button where Sam would just kind of shout out and go, "Hey!" You know, we've seen Kojima kind of use it in a couple of the videos so far. So I think it's just like...
Yeah, I think he says, "Hey, is anybody there?"
Yeah, that's
stuff like
it.
that, doesn't he? Yeah.
So, and then as Rich says, we see these kind of apparitions pop up, or seemingly other versions of Sam's, because obviously they're players.
Yes.
I mean, whether that's somebody like live in another game who's having to like select an item to give to you, or if it's some kind of automatic thing that you select in a menu somewhere to say, if I get a request for help, automatically send this, because that could be potentially confusing, couldn't it?
Yeah, what do you do if there's no one online either? So I
Yeah.
don't know on that one. I see what you're saying.
And if you're
I
playing
see
your
that
own
would be hard
game
to-
and you get this message, it's like, you know, you might start to get a little bit like, oh god, not another one of these again. I want to just crack on.
Yeah. So I don't know, but areas marked where you rest appear on other people's maps, and they're almost like cairns. I don't know if you've seen them if anyone's been out walking, and much like when we see Sam urinate, something happens. Kojima said if lots of people urinate in the same spot, maybe something really good would happen. We don't know what that is, but I have a theory. He's basically said that the same thing will happen with rest points. If I use a rest point that Tabz has used, something good might happen. And I thought on this, maybe if Tabz rests at a point, and maybe I go and use that same rest point, does Tabz get likes? Or actually, does Tabz get benefits of resting while not resting? Is that like a way of me giving him rest?
Yeah, I like that. I think definitely the likes thing. I think that's a great shout that, you know, you're going to get some likes from it. I also think, though, this cairn thing, you know, we know what cairns are created, aren't they, Rich? Because basically people who pass through continually put more and more stones up and pile them on one another.
Yeah.
That's the kind of the whole the theory behind it. So you can imagine this cairn getting bigger and bigger as more people rest there. So you're literally creating these little milestones on routes, and maybe eventually then these cairns, well, kind of what you're saying there, Rich, they provide a much better stamina rejuvenation, essentially.
Yeah.
So a lot more quickly, the bigger this cairn is, which makes sense, doesn't it? If you
Yeah, absolutely.
And the weeing thing, I mean, I don't know what that's going to do. The mushroom's just too balmy for me. I can't get my head around it.
I don't get that.
It's going to be along the same lines, isn't it? Something like that.
There's a reason he didn't interact with the mushroom, though. If you notice, the mushroom grew, and then he just moved straight on. There's some reason that he didn't interact with that, because he didn't want to give some game away of what happens, what that is.
I really hope you don't harvest a mushroom and eat it, because that's just a bit gross, isn't it? Wee mushrooms.
Yeah, I'm not sure that would be great. But
or is he going to have a trip? Is he going to smoke some magic mushrooms and have a big trip? I mean, I wouldn't put it past Kojima, mate. I honestly wouldn't.
Yeah, to be fair, yeah.
So yeah.
Moving us on. Go on then.
Oh, so you can also follow in other players' footprints. So we've seen this featured heavily in Rich's original asynchronous gameplay dynamic, and we'll, perhaps you can regale us with that in just a second, Rich. But essentially, you can see other people's footprints, I think, when you activate your topographic sensor. And apparently, if you do this enough and you walk in other people's footprints enough, you'll actually form a road or path in the game, and that these will appear on the map as well. And obviously, it's going to help navigation traversal. So that's really interesting. And building on this cairn idea as well. So we're going to be making our own infrastructure in this world. We're going to be making routes, roads, resting points. Carry on, Rich.
I think what's really interesting is the technical achievement of that. So what he's saying is the world is ultimately deformable.
Yes.
If you can create these like paths and roads throughout the world, then that's amazing. That's like what you see in the real world. You go walking, in your village, in the fields, you see these trodden paths that have become, like dirt, roads that you can see on satellite maps and stuff. So that's really interesting. I really like the idea of that.
Definitely. I mean, we'll come to this a little bit more later with some of the other points we've made. But yeah, I mean, go on.
Actually, a game that is seen a lot of. If anyone's played the Settlers games, that happens a lot. So you place your buildings around. It's like an RTS, and you have like these little minions that move the various resources around. Well, as they move from one to another, the more they do that, becomes like a trodden path on the map, and that means they can move faster from point to point.
Really clever, isn't it?
So
because it's naturally occurring, the way it's implemented, and obviously that's what happens in real life. That's kind of how these hiking routes in the world are created, aren't they? People following in other people's footsteps and adding to them, making them easier for people and safer for people to use. And I just think we don't really know how deep all these mechanics go yet in terms of this modifiable world and shareable world that we're inhabiting. But as you say, Rich, massive technical achievement. The same goes, by the way, for vehicles. So motorbikes, if, for example, you keep following other people's footsteps, apparently roads will even form, which are, again, smoother surface, easy to navigate.
Exactly.
Consumable
items can be disposed of as garbage, which can also be seen by players, and they can be recycled at prepper bases. And I think we've seen this on one of the menus that there's a recycle option. So
yeah, I put a question mark there, though, Rich, because we don't know that, but that's just, it seems to go together, doesn't it? He said you can throw away certain items and then it'll appear, on another player's screen. Well, presumably you can pick those up and recycle them, and you get some sort of resource perhaps for them. So.
Absolutely. So that's it. And we have seen that there is a recycled option in the menus at the prepper spaces. So I think that's what we're thinking maybe links back to that. If you want, if you've got some worn out boots that are no good to man the beast, you can recycle them at the prepper spaces. But we've yet to see how that's going to play out.
No.
So that leads us on to the next topic, which is map traversal and equipment.
Right then, so we know for sure from these trailers that Capital Knot City is in the east side of the map, and Port Knot City is on the west side of the map. And I think actually we did have a subscriber point this out to us, because previously we still don't know where Edge Knot City is, do we? We thought that was towards the west of the map. But yeah, interestingly to have this confirmed to us.
It's interesting to note that the cities always have knot in the title. I think that's very interesting. Does that relate to the fact that they're knotted, they're a tied place, they're a constant, so there's a knot in them, if that makes sense?
I think it's confirmed by, it might be Amelie, but essentially they're referred to as knots because they're knotted in the chiral network. I think
so that's what it is. That's right then. Yeah, brilliant.
So yeah, Rich, you want to take us on? What we got next?
Yeah, so we've seen when you have a loadout and you move out into the world, you have to balance the load. It can be made better or worse by the way in which you stack your cargo on your back. And this is like with what we're referred to here is with Jenga. That's what we've referred to it as. So the way in which you stack the load on your back affects how easy it's going to be for you to stabilize the load moving through the world. and there appears on there to be like a center of gravity dot, so you can see roughly where that is, and I guess ultimately you're going to want to see that like pretty much straight down the middle. I'm guessing it's not always going to be like that, and when it's the further it is away from the center, the more your stamina is going to deplete, and the harder it is going to be to stabilize using the L and R when you're out in the world.
Yeah, it sounds interesting, doesn't it? It sounds potentially frustrating if that's a constant, but I'm hoping it's low maintenance.
The only thing I will say, there is a simplifier there because you can optimize this with a simple button. There's automatic optimization available, and I'm sure that's going to be designed for the people that they don't want to spend hours and hours. People that don't want to have the time fussing on that. I don't know whether me and you are necessarily like that, Tabz. I'm going to enjoy that part of the game, I think. But like you say, if it comes a bit tedious or you literally want to just go and do a quick mission, then that's an option.
Yeah, just click the optimization and it's all done. And I think it's just a quirky thing, isn't it? Like we see him stacking all these crates up, but then he kind of shows you, well, actually you can put 15 grenades in a pouch pocket and attach it to, to the back of the, I don't know what you'd call it, but his backpack essentially. But it's interesting that they've built that in. It looks like you can get some ludicrous stacks, doesn't it? Because we saw it only halfway on the trailer, and he's got this teetering tower of cases on his back. So
yeah, I think that's interesting, because I think Kojima basically just stacked them all up to sort of show,
how flexible it is.
Yeah. I mean, I think when we saw him do that, it only went up to like, I don't know, 70 kilos or something out of 120. So, the amount of weight that he can actually carry is incredible. And I'm guessing that's not always all on the back. You've got the arms, you can carry stuff side by side. So, there's a lot of scope there, I think. And I'm guessing as you go further on in the game and you've got to make these incredible treks through the worlds, it's going to be a little bit crazy how much stuff you've got to take.
Yeah, and I think it's just another thing, quirk of Kojima's. He sometimes likes to implement these kind of real consequences, and obviously this is completely in the opposite of a lot of games where you've got Mary Poppins bags basically. You can put as much as you want in a bag, and it never matters. Whereas this, I think from what we've seen, all of the equipment will have literally a physical place on Sam's person. It has to go back there as well. You're not going to see him, put an AK-47 down his pants and it vanishes into nothing. It's an interesting thing, and we all like to pack before a holiday, don't we?
No.
Yeah, I know.
Nobody ever.
There is a satisfaction though, isn't there, to getting everything nicely packed in a car.
I think we earlier on this year we played Resident Evil, didn't we, Tabz? And the backpack arrangement on this on Death Stranding is very similar to your loadout in Resident Evil. You have the certain amount of slots. Some things take up maybe 1 slot, some things take up 2 slots, some take 4 slots, and you have to figure out how you can fit these all together to get the best possible loadout. And that's something we really tried to do in Resident Evil. I know we spent a bit of time on that, didn't we, Tabz?
Yeah, definitely. It's just another little feature, isn't it? And a challenge of the game. But exactly. I think it's really going to root out the players in us that are hoarders, that want to take everything under the sun with them, to those that just travel a bit too light and perhaps find themselves, underprepared. It's just another dynamic which I think is going to be a really cool part of the game. But it's great that we've got those kind of cheat optimization buttons as well. Yeah,
exactly. I think that, potentially that'll be used a lot, especially when time is against you.
Absolutely. So we've covered that part off. So we also know in terms of traversal, you can go point to point however you want to. You can actually set this on the map as well. So it's not just an A to B. You can literally put multiple point-to-point routes as part of one big, route, if you like. Does that make sense, Rich? Or maybe put a screenshot to help explain as well.
Yeah, almost like a satellite navigation. You're telling it, right, I want to go this particular route,
Yeah, but you kind of say, I want to go from here to here, and then I want to go from here to here, and then I want to go from, it's not just, you go in one straight line, if you see what I mean. So that's really cool. Of course, as we said, key is you've got to carefully plan the routes, stamina's a consideration, your loadout, and obviously enemy deployment along the way, which is something you're probably going to have to guess a lot.
And you can avoid it, or you can take it on. Like, that seems to be what there's being said.
Absolutely, very much in the Breath of the Wild theme, the world is your oyster to tackle it however you wish.
Exactly.
You've got access to this topographic sensor, which helps also you plan the route three-dimensionally. And that will actually kind of give you an idea, an overlay of the kind of risky terrain, if you like. So we see Sam use it when he's crossing a river. So the deep sections are kind of highlighted in red. I think the quite deep sections, but you can just about get away with a like amber coloured. So on and so forth, and that just gives you an idea of, what your chances are tackling that particular piece of terrain. Water, we've been told by Kojima, is actually consumed through rain and rivers via your clothing. So that seems to be
interesting.
Yeah, that seems to be something you don't really have to be on point with, because you're just going to absorb it as you go.
Yeah, exactly.
Although you do need to down your monsters, do you, Rich? Because of Kojima's sponsorship with Monster.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it looks like there's going to be maybe a few of these little tie-ups. Monster Energy being one. I think there's a possibility that some sunglasses brand has been on board as well. Did I read? And
we even seen Norman Reedus's bike show advertised in the private room trailer.
Yeah.
So
it's interesting. I don't know why Kojima's decided to do that. Maybe that was one of the things that, like he's had to get all these celebrities and stuff on board. Maybe that was one of the ways in which he got some of them on board. Like, I'll come and do that, but what am I getting out of it? Oh, okay, well, we'll put your Monster Energy drink in there or whatever.
Needs to pay the bills and something there, isn't there? Either way, I'm not too fussed about it. I don't think it'll have much of an effect on the game. It doesn't
seem like it's, it's an overburden with that from what we've seen. It looks like they're just like little, quips here and there for these things. So
we'll forgive him.
The energy drink would have been in the game anyway. It's just been branded as Monster Energy. I don't think that's the end of the world.
No,
it's not a loot crate.
Yeah, exactly. That's
so let's be thankful for small mercies. So we've seen ropes and ladders, and these can be upgraded to make them longer, and I'm guessing stronger. And also, we saw in the trailer that he takes on a power skeleton. Some people that have pre-ordered the special edition and the collector's edition, I believe you get a special edition skeleton. I'm not sure what it is, but I know it's gold in colour. But these basically significantly improve your speed.
Those are speed skeletons, those ones. So there's speed skeletons and there's power skeletons. I think they do different jobs.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, right, cool. So the speed skeletons, they improve your speed. I think that they also allow you to jump like significant
massive distances.
Yeah. And it looks like the power skeletons allow you to raise your carrying capacity, which is really interesting. I thought the speed skeleton also did this, Tabz. I thought when he puts the speed skeleton on, when he gets it from that base, his carry capacity goes up to 250 kilos.
Maybe it does, and maybe they've got, the power skeletons just do a lot more.
Yeah, it's like
or they
500
give you
kilos or something.
Yeah, and maybe they give you offensive capabilities as well. So maybe there's a bit of a crossover between them. But certainly it seems like they're powered by solar charging. So in that way, they have a finite use to them, and they have kind of a cooldown until you can use them again, which is good because they look OP, don't they? From what we've seen in that trailer.
Yeah, definitely. And then do you want to take us on the next point, Tabz?
Yeah, we see these little kind of hovering trailers, which are apparently called floaters, which we've seen in previous videos. Yeah.
I wonder whether Kojima realises.
I don't think he'd mind if he.
Translation.
I don't think he'd mind if he did.
Yeah, to be fair.
Yeah, he's got number ones and number twos in it, so why not some floaters as well? So anyway, they're called floaters, these trailers. You can have up to 2 floaters at once, which obviously help alleviate Sam's, need to balance with all of his
stamina reduction.
Yeah, and reduces the amount of stamina he's outlaying, if you like, because he's not on his back. But then really cool, there's like a multi-use to these floaters that you can actually use it like a hoverboard in terms of traversal. So we see him kind of almost Breath of the Wild style surfing down a cliff face in the trailer. Rich.
It's like the shield surfing mechanism, isn't it? Really, it's a bit like that, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, a nice little element of fun. You can almost imagine, you know, players coming up with some sort of way to race each other on a downhill segment, and perhaps you can record the times and asynchronously set up a course. Yeah. It'd be amazing.
Oh, nice. That would be cool.
Oh God, Rich is well involved now. We've talked about driving and racing.
Another thing to note, we see him in the trailer connect like a little charm, I think it looks like a dream catcher in this one, to his backpack. And it looks like there's lots of different ones available here. I think we've seen a Ludens one on one of the trailers connected, so it looks like there's very different.
You can connect them to BB as well, we've seen. So
we have actually, yeah, you're right. So I don't know, maybe later on you can connect multiple ones. These basically give effects like lowering the chance of timefall or look, or lots of different things by the looks of it. And so I'm guessing there'll be lots of them to collect.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that again, they just help you in the world, don't they? So the specific one in the trailer lowers the chance of timefall occurring, so just makes your life easier. Be interesting to see how those play out. But they're all to do with luck and chance.
And what's available? You know, there might be one that's there. You know, maybe towards the end of the game where it helps you get past BTs, maybe. Yeah,
they're kind of like little perks, aren't they?
Exactly. You see in other games. So let's move on to the next one, which we're calling Preppers and Side Quests.
Right then, so side quests come in the form of lost cargo missions, which you find en route and will be delivered to various preppers in the world. In the trailer, does he?
He finds that lost cargo, that he then takes to the prepper. It turns out to be a harmonica, I believe, and then he gives him the harmonica.
I think it's a piece of equipment because the guy's a musician. I don't know if it is the harmonica. I think the guy gives us the harmonica as a gift, saying thanks. You know. Yeah. So that's kind of cool. There's actually a specific point as well. Oh, I'll just cover off. Of course, these side quests don't seem to be compulsory. So there are like main plotline deliveries for the storyline and whatnot, and presumably they're mostly given to you by the delivery depots, the centres, you know, and by bridges themselves. But these kind of side quests are more optional. And there's almost a confirmation as well that Kojima says preppers' bases are confirmed as bunkers, because he says something like he lives in the basement.
Trying not to act smug.
I know. So basically that's my whole mission to the moon thing put to rest, I think.
Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah. It was interesting while it lasted. But
did he use the term he lives in the basement, I think, to have something along them lines?
Yeah, that's right, yeah. So we're almost confirmed that these guys live underground in these little bunker bases, and they're holograms kind of are projected above Earth of them.
Still unconfirmed as to why that's the case, which is slightly infuriating. But I think Kojima's basically said you will find out no more about the story between now and release. He's not going to tell us anything.
I think it's mostly going to be to do with dooms, isn't it? Sam has dooms, which allows him to resist all of the chiral effects, phenomena, side effects. I think if people who don't have that step out in the real world, well, they're at risk of being aged and killed, aren't they, by timefall?
Exactly,
because they don't have that kind of protection. So that's probably why they have to live underground.
Yeah.
We know as well in terms of side quests, so I'll just take this, Rich, speed us along a bit because we're going on. Time taken, condition of the cargo will affect your reward in the form of likes from preppers. And I think that will perhaps bear into, we know now this star rating above preppers' bases is to do with their relationship with Sam or with you as the player. So that the more you do for them, the more that grows. And I think the more they give you, the more familiar they are with you. You know, you just get little payoffs like that. And specifically, the lost cargo, condition of the lost cargo is affected by timefall damage and physical damage. So if you drop it in the out in the open.
And that's why I think we're going to come on to that in a minute, but you don't really want to leave cargo just in the world.
No,
we'll
definitely
come on to that
not.
in a minute.
Yeah.
So we're going to move on to structures and points of interest. So we've seen, I think twice now, we've seen that the world has these hot springs in it, and there seems to be a variety of different types in the world that can have different effects, it seems, although we're not 100% sure what they are. Certainly one that we've seen Sam in seems to rejuvenate him in terms of his health and stamina. Is that right, Tabz?
Yes, yeah, that hot spring is specifically kind of a recharging spring. They all have apparently different uses, so it recovers his stamina and his batteries as well, I think.
Which
Kojima
is interesting.
said. Yeah, I don't know how that makes sense scientifically, but we'll take it.
And I think these can be used basically when you're not near your safe house. So maybe you're on a real long trek, your safe house is miles away, you need to recharge. Maybe you're not in the chiral network, so you can't create something to help you. So that's just an option as almost like a rest stop before you move on. And we've seen you can sing in the springs, which your BB seems to like. Not sure about the singing. But also you can sing with other players in the spring. I think we've seen Sam and Mama in the spring together. We're not entirely certain why, but we've seen that.
So they're connecting chirally almost, aren't they?
Yes.
Very strange. Is that just a Kojima's excuse to get a naked woman in the hot spring with you? I don't know.
Potentially. And then we also saw when he used the spring that you can put signposts outside so all the players can see that, because it does look quite hostile. So you'd see it and think, oh, I need to steer clear of that. But actually, the signposts may be there to say, no, come and use this. It's good. It's a rejuvenating spring. So that's interesting.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
We've also seen that there are hundreds of signs by the looks of it that you can put all around the world. Maybe
there will be springs, Rich, which are not good for you. So maybe that's going to be required, not just to sort out the different uses of springs, but maybe there are some which are like sulfuric, and you just have to find out the hard way. But
that's it, yeah.
The singing thing, I'm still really not sure on where that's coming from or going. But again, it's cute, isn't it? I think we can say that.
I guess so, yeah. Yeah. And we've seen later.
Come on. No, you started, mate.
I was going to say, we've seen later on that one of the signs that was put down seemed to give Sam like a speed boost while he was on his bike, which was interesting.
Yeah, whether that was a joke from Kojima, just as he passed the sign, he decided to do a wheelie and, a speed boost, or whether they literally do, because he says something like that, like in games, you get a speed boost if you go over a certain patch. I'm not sure, but either way, it looks cool.
Definitely.
If I just pick us up, so in terms of structures as well, we've got the post boxes, which they're referred to as these lockers. Yep. They can actually be printed by the players as well, so you could dot these around to your heart's content, seemingly.
Yeah.
They can be shared, or they can be just private to you. So, you can put equipment in there for other people to use, or you can just keep them entirely private for your own use. Kojima says it's always best to store your cargo in lockers, rather than loose in the world. I mean, we do see a section where before he goes to visit the mules, he just dumps them on the ground. And I think that's just for the purposes of the demo, but I think as we play, the best bet is try and print yourself a locker and stash them in there so they don't get degraded by the timefall or whatnot.
I think he does, just to break in there, Tabz, I think he does that because otherwise he wouldn't be able to sneak into their base because they would detect the cargo.
Yeah, they've got some sort of proximity that picks up on cargo, don't they?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think as well, if you left it loose, potentially you could find it and see it as lost cargo and pick it up. So if I need it for a mission, I've just lost that.
Yes.
So
that's true, yeah.
I think your best bet is always to put them in lockers. Shelters can also be printed, which clean the timefall off your cargo. And as we saw in the trailer, also have like a nice little musical interlude for players who just want to have a chill. They can be customized with different music, upgraded to provide better facilities, presumably for things like restoring stamina, improving the rejuvenation of stamina. And whether they change physically when you upgrade them, I don't know. That would be cool. I think he suggests they can become cozier, so perhaps maybe you get a little interior.
Yeah.
And then finally, we also see a structure called a recharging point,
Yes.
which does what it says on the tin. It
Just recharges your batteries of your equipment, basically.
exactly, and again, you can customize them with music and things like that. So there seems to be a real depth there, and this is quickly becoming one of my favourite parts of the game, Rich. This idea of this deformable, modifiable world. I can't wait.
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely. And probably one of the most beautiful looking worlds we've seen.
Yeah.
I know you would say Red Dead would be up with that at the same time, but incredible world, really. Especially as it's actually being run on, would you say a fairly outdated engine?
Oh, hugely.
I mean, it's just because it's a good number of years old. When did the game's name escapes me currently? You just played it, Tabz. We did a review on it.
Resident Evil.
The Decima engine. No.
Oh, Horizon Zero Dawn. Yes.
Yeah. So
Dawn.
that came out a number of years ago. So, the engine's fairly old, you would say. Really. I mean, I'm sure it's been updated and stuff, but so that's really impressive how cool the world looks. But should we move this on, Tabz, to Timefall?
Indeed. You or me?
I'll go. Timefall is a phenomena basically from the other world, or the downstairs world, the death world. And it's basically where the downstairs world and the normal world like merging together, and you get this timefall. But it also generally means that BTs too.
Where you getting this downstairs world from? I've not heard that term before, my friend.
Because we've said about it's like the underworld, haven't we?
Yeah. I just
linked it.
I've just not heard downstairs before. I liked it.
We've linked it back to a bit like I can't think of any of the names. Stranger Things. We've linked it a little bit. To that,
upside down. Yeah, the upside down. That's right.
Yeah.
So
that's why I'm using this downstairs world.
I like it. No, I like it. No shots fired. So Timefall, is this phenomena of it merging with our reality.
Yeah, basically.
And obviously BTs along with that, because they are the denizens of this other world, if you like, this upside down. So you can dodge Timefall, we understand, by using weather forecasts, which are unlocked later in the game.
And two things to support this. Firstly, I think on the map, when the player goes to select a region, you see these like orange, like wavy areas, and I think that suggests that that's the timefall in that area. But also we've seen these are they radomes?
Radomes, yes, and the giant chiral sensors.
They are literally used in the real world, as in now, to predict weather, aren't they?
Yeah, we've shown them in our previous trailers. We had a little spotlight on them, and seems to be that later on in the game that'll be a new dynamic, and maybe our little watch will be connected up to them, and you can kind of see, I won't bother going that route because there's a big patch of timefall. But again, a nice kind of changing dynamic in the world, that's going to continually be a problem. It's not the same, but it kind of makes me think of the blood moon in Zelda, mate, that would rejuvenate enemy characters. Yeah. And obviously that would potentially cause issues in terms of traversal and navigation, so
definitely
that's interesting. What else?
So water droplets on the head-up display, when they are going upwards, that means that their BTs are close, basically. Sam will get goosebumps as he senses them
because of his dooms.
And timefall will also degrade the cargo you are carrying. So it's important to find shelter when you get this timefall.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's always going to be something to be mindful of. We also know that chiral crystals are found where it rains. So that's interesting as well, because chiral crystals seem to be an important resource.
And it's interesting to note because chiral crystals are going to be looking to be an important resource. So it's going to be, you're going to have to at some point venture into areas that have had timefall.
Yeah, to get those. And we also know, and we'll come back to this later, you're rewarded chiral crystals by beating the BTs. So, like you say, there's a trade-off there, isn't there? Risk and reward.
Exactly.
Yeah, and Kojima literally says that the chiral crystals can be used to refuel floaters. So obviously we talked about floaters previously.
Yeah.
And whether this was a translation issue or not, but even build highways. And I'm sure in the spot where he mentions this, we'll try and flash the image up, but there is some sort of like highway in the distance that I think he's referencing. I mean, that just seems crazy. We've talked about all this modifiable world, but building highways, really?
Yeah,
That seems...
I mean, that's next level, isn't it? Blimey.
Yeah, build a big motorway across Death Stranding to take your bike on by the end of it.
Blimey. Right, are we ready for the next slide?
We are indeed, my friend.
So, the next one we're going to talk about is chiral sensor and BBs.
Yeah, put these together because they kind of relate to each other. And so yeah, from the trailer, we're not entirely sure. Again, translation issues, but the chiral sensor has actually got a name now. It's something like Odradek, or even Odoradeg. I don't think it's Odoradeg. I'm going to go with Odoradeg.
Uh-huh. And I'm guessing that's just a translation issue. It's an odd word, so we can't get good translation on it.
Yeah, he said they used to call them something like flaps, or, because they did this kind of flapping, something like that.
Yeah, they do that, like thing like that, don't they?
Yeah, but they've got like an official name now, and it's something like that, Odradek. BBs, of course, are activated by connecting, activate the actual chiral sensor by connecting to their still mothers, and therefore the other world by extension. So that's how we suddenly are able to see BTs via the way they work together. BB's stress levels will increase in the presence of BTs, and they'll actually shut down if they get too stressed, which will of course break your connection and leave you in the dark, not being able to see these BTs. And we've kind of seen that, and that's been explained in the Deadman character trailer, wasn't it? The way that they get stressed, and then you have to go back and sync them with their still mothers to get them back online. Go on.
Our BB seems to be, it's either connected to Mads's BB, and that's the BB we see him talking specifically to in the 9-minute trailer from May, or it is Mads' BB. We're unsure on this, whether we're getting the flashbacks because through the still mother it's being linked in some way to Mads' BB. We're not sure on that, but for some reason we're getting these flashbacks of things that Mads is doing or history of Mads, and I think that's how Kojima will use those to sort of introduce Mads as a character and progress his story, even though maybe we don't come across Mads in the world that often, because ultimately they're going to be boss fights really when we get to Mads, aren't they? So I think that's his way of giving us more information on Mads without having us fight Mads. Yeah,
which is a nice way to drip feed it throughout and keep you interested. But I thought for a minute, is Mads' BB, is Sam Mads' BB, because it's from this first person perspective. But I think Kojima goes on to suggest that, the logical thing is that we have the same BB. We've somehow inherited Mads' BB, but inconclusive. And BB, of course, hates water. We've seen that. Kojima's told us that. And rivers can be particularly challenging and costly to cross, I suppose for that reason as well. Even though apparently he likes hot springs.
So fathom that one.
Next up, Rich.
So next up we've got BTs, which are in essence our enemies that we'll see all throughout the world really. When BTs are around, we can see them if we stop moving, but as soon as we start moving they disappear, we can't see them. The ones we've seen that are like floating in the air with almost like the umbilical cords coming out of them are called gazers, I think it's pronounced. So they gaze at you, I suppose, I like it. More meta. They literally doing what they say they are. They can't see us, but they sense us via sound and atmospheric changes, and that's one of the reasons why we see Sam cover his mouth, so that it sort of like limits his atmospheric change through his breath. Condensation, whatever he's creating, I suppose they can see that, they just can't see us. Exactly. And then what we see in the trailer is one of the child gazers finds Sam and sends out a hunter, which is the thing we see with these big orange handprints, to basically catch Sam. And it looks like you can resist these, but by literally like stopping them from dragging you down, basically. And you saw in the trailer, once they drag you down, they take you off to an area where you have a boss fight or a battle. But it looks like you're affected. The way in which you can get away from that is affected by how much cargo you've got. Ultimately, I guess if you're fully loaded with cargo, you've not got enough to try and get yourself from being dragged down, so you just instantly drag down.
Or maybe if you quickly bang on a speed skeleton, you can get the heck out of dodge, if you know what I mean.
True. Yeah. So maybe you can outrun them.
Yeah. And then the big monster, as Rich has alluded to, is called a catcher type. So this kind of big, kind of dog-like, lion-like monster we see. These are the ones which trigger one of these craters or void outs if you get taken or eaten by them.
And I'd just like to interject here that I think it's Aaron. Is it Aaron Pingle?
Aaron Pingle, yep.
He actually had a theory that looks like it's come into fruition from what he said, that these big BTs, the reason why they make such large craters when they explode or kill you, etc., is because they're made of antimatter. And when the antimatter comes in contact with Sam's body, it creates this colossal explosion, which would be bigger than anything created by any modern weapons that we have now.
Yeah, nuclear, things like that. So Aaron had that theory, and it seems to have been confirmed, I think he said, by Kojima, that it is an antimatter reaction, and
yes.
Which is what we see. So yeah, congrats Aaron. It's always nice to have a theory confirmed. And thanks again for all your support. So yeah, in terms of these catches then, seemingly that would be the process by which you would then be killed, or as we know, you won't die as such. I think the next stage is you're caught in this, I think it's called the void. So it's like this purgatory between, the other world and our world. And then at that point you have to try and find Sam's physical body again. You're in this kind of metaphysical area, and I think it's the ocean, Rich. We've seen... Yeah, where it's
so you're just controlling the camera at that point?
I'm really not sure, you see. There's got to be something weird about it. I don't know if we know enough, but certainly it seems to be at that point you're in this kind of ocean place, and we know that Sam can't get stranded. He'll always come back, I think, because of his dooms. Yeah. So, he seems to be able to come back from that. But to get us back to this capture type, obviously Kojima doesn't get killed in the trailer. So they seem to summon this kind of tar-like substance, which is there to slow you down and make the fight a lot harder and make you easier prey. Apparently you can run away from these captures altogether. So again, if you had a speed skeleton, maybe you just keep running and eventually you'll hit your normal reality again. Yeah, it didn't look like where could you run to when you saw it in the trailer.
It didn't. It looked massive.
But... Yeah. But otherwise, Kojima says, you've got to jump on buildings, on items to kind of remain out of this tar stuff. Apparently the catcher we saw is the weakest incarnation or type of these particular BTs. So, God forbid what we will see. And they leave chiral crystals as rewards. I mean, we'll come back to this. Oh no, we won't come back to this. This is where we talk about it. So, body fluids act as anti-BT bioweapons. So again, I think, was it a viewer, a subscriber, Captain Level, had mentioned something like this in the comments, Rich. Put us onto this one as well, so thank you, Captain Level. But yeah, so body fluids can essentially be weaponized. Yeah. So blood and blood packs can be infused, I think, in various weapons. But we see kind of grenades created, don't we?
We see grenades, don't we? Yeah.
And then, and that literally, I think, damages the BTs because again of Sam's dooms, which is like an immunity to the BTs, and I suppose they have like a reaction to it. And waste fluids, so the kind of the blue things, they slow BTs down. And apparently, I think this was right, if the translation was right, blues can be used against gazers and catchers. So I suppose there's a benefit to slowing them both down, isn't there? You can get away from them definitely. A bit easier. So very creative use of these body fluids. That will be...
ultimately, when we eventually get the proper game, all these little scenarios will be more... they'll be informed better. It's not just going to leave all these things to your own thoughts. They'll all be properly talked through on the game. So expect some 40-minute cutscenes about why his bodily fluids are used to kill enemies.
Yeah, and the documents, there'll be loads of lore, I'm sure, as to Dooms and what it's all about, which will be interesting.
Exactly, yeah. And we've not, I don't think we've really spoke about that, but some of the weapons that you can get, you can use them on people in the world, such as the enemies you see him fighting at that little encampment. But also some of the weapons can also be used on these gazers, and I think we see Sam at this point in the game play that we've seen using this. I can't think what it was called, a bow gun or something, or a
bowler gun. Bowler
gun, that's it. Yeah. We see him use that on the gazer as well, and it seems to wrap it round so that it sort of stops it from moving around. So that's really interesting.
Yeah, it's like an energy weapon, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes, in essence, and it just wraps them up so that they can't seemingly move. Yes, it's a cool idea. Let's move on to the next heading, which is Sam himself.
So we know absolutely that looking after your feet is super important. They can bleed, nails can have to be removed if they get so bad. Again, another kind of management mechanic in the game that we're going to have to keep an eye on throughout, making sure. I don't know what happens when they get so bad. I mean, obviously your shoes will degrade and you'll eventually be barefooted, but then what happens? Does Sam stop moving? Does his health then start to go down?
I'm guessing your stamina depletes really fast and then your health starts to go down ultimately. I'm guessing those are the two things.
Yeah, that seems to make sense. So along with that, shoes can be leveled up to improve their durability. Apparently boots can be left in the wild for other Sams to utilise. So obviously keeping an eye on that is going to be crucial.
And it really comes into fruition that we've said all along, we see boots in every single trailer. There's strapped to the bike, he seems to carry multiple sets of boots around with on his back. Well, this is why, because they're a consumable item, so you need to take enough with you to ensure that you have enough to get to wherever you're going.
Yeah, definitely. And again, that kind of real world consequences that we see Kojima using a lot in this game.
Exactly.
It's interesting. Apparently you can whistle, and as we've seen in the trailer, play the harmonica.
Nice.
Whether I think it's just Sam plays it, any given tune, and it's not something you can actually play different notes on. But apparently the more you do, the better Sam becomes at playing the harmonica, which is interesting. And BB, of course, likes the interaction.
Likes it and gives you likes for it.
Yeah.
So, another thing, you seem to be able to get likes from your BB.
Yeah, I mean, just very quickly on the likes, from what I've seen, they might not actually have a resource. I think Kojima's said that they're almost this, a quantity of interacting with things, but there's no particular payoff for them, other than the fact that you can give them and take them, and it's just a way to interact with things. I don't know whether that will be the case or not, but either way, I'm happy with that.
So, yeah.
Apparently Sam whistles when he's happy as well. So when he feels comforted and secure, he whistles. I mean,
a bit like The Sims, when your character was content, it'd be like,
yeah.
That's quite interesting.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a take on that.
I suppose it's a little acknowledgement to the player as well. Oh, you can relax a bit because, I'm happy and things are looking good. So maybe there's an element of that.
Yeah.
We know that eating crypto biotes, well, I'm confused on this. I probably need to look at the IGN translation, but it seemed to suggest eating crypto biotes gives you blood. I mean...
Oh, okay, that's a way of levelling up sort of thing.
I don't know,
Well, not levelling up, but healing. Cause
healing, yeah, maybe. But it was almost certain that crypto biotes helped immunise you to the Timefall in some way.
Yeah, or in some way, yeah, definitely.
Maybe they power you up. Maybe they power up your dooms
resistance.
Yeah, maybe there's something there. I'm really not sure. Maybe they give you a temporary buff so that any blood thereafter extracted is super powered. I don't know.
Exactly, and we've actually seen that you can collect these cryptobiotes from those red shrubs or something in the world. We actually find them in there, I think.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, there's like a little. I suppose they have like a little colony in these.
Yeah, exactly.
These rocks or these shrubs. I'm not sure what they were.
We've seen Sam sleeping a lot in the game, which is a way of Sam recovering stamina and also health. It's not a way of getting it fully restored like if you're in a safe house, but it's a way of recovering some of it, and it's also a way of auto-saving. So that's how the game will auto-save. So if you need to save, you have to rest by the looks of it. Also, apparently resting also helps Sam recover injuries, such as when his feet are bleeding, we've seen. And also it's a way that the player can relax too. It's a pause menu in essence, so you can make yourself a cup of tea, get a beer, whatever you want to do while that's happening.
It's interesting whether there'll be a traditional pause button or this is Kojima's way of implementing it. But
yeah, I mean, from what we've seen, I don't think this has the traditional head-up display, where you go into a menu and that's like a pause menu. I don't think this has that sort of menu system quite like other games.
Well, presumably, if it's online, because you're working asynchronously, you can't really pause it, can you? Because it's always sharing that data. So maybe that's why he's had to put this in. But it's a nice touch. I think it'll be
definitely
a cool thing. So we also know cosmetic items exist like caps and shades, and they are simply for fashion, just to enjoy fashion, as Kojima says.
And as we previously discussed, colours can be changed and stuff, so they literally are just for look, basically.
We know that electric shocks will make Sam go faint or potentially unconscious. The likes of the kind of electric javelins we've seen, Rich. So that's something that we're going to need to be careful about. We know that Sam has nightmares, so we see this very strange kind of cutscene with BB in the private room trailer, where BB seemingly headbutts and smashes out of his tank and attacks Sam or something like that. What that means. That was. Yeah. I mean, whether you're going to have all these different types of nightmares, I don't know, and what they'll look like.
I don't know.
Remains to be seen. Go on.
And we know almost certainly that Sam's dooms is the reason why he comes back from the other world. That's as in the reason. So whenever he goes to the other world, the upside down world, the downstairs world, whatever we want to call it, when he comes back from that, it's almost certainly because of his dooms. And every time he does come back, we've seen he gets these handprints all over his body. And we're wondering whether that in some way will give you a rating at the end of the game. So, it might be you've completed the game with 70 handprints or whatever. That's your game rating almost.
This made me think of just MGS style, Rich, because you used to get a rating, didn't you, for how good you were?
Yes.
Whether it was an animal in some games or an actual grading in other games. So will that factor into multiple endings, this rating, and therefore that factors into the new game plus mode if there is one? Will there be specific story beats that will be affected by how many times you've been taken down, by the catchers? So again, I like the fact that you've got this kind of physical consequence on Sam's body for getting killed essentially in the traditional sense. So that's another interesting thing. We'll have to see how that one plays out.
And just to touch on that, if this was a rating system like it was in MGS4, I believe Tabz and the handprints were alerts, then Tabz would have gone an entire game without a single handprint.
Yeah, but it has to be said, mate, if you remember MGS games, you can break them down into sections, you can save, reload continuously. And I got pretty good at some of the older games, but there was also a lot of saving and reloading.
Great attention to detail.
Thanks.
Take nothing away from it. Anyway, carrying on.
So that could be another versus mode for us, Rich. A section of an MGS game who can get through it the best. Yeah,
maybe that's one for you, one that's in your wheelhouse rather than mine.
Indeed. Anyway, let's get this done. So Death Stranding, actually, this is a gaming first PSA, public service announcement. Death Stranding actually measures if you have a full stomach and how full your bladder is. So we know this because apparently you can't extract waste fluids, funnily enough, unless Sam has a full stomach, and therefore can have a number 2 or a number 1. And of course, obviously, we literally have seen the bladder measurement as it drains, as Sam has.
Yeah, milliliters.
So yeah, Kojima does not shy away from our baser functions as animals, does he? He likes to draw a big line around them.
Right, so moving on to our last one in this section, which is mules. Right,
so we now know that the faction that we've seen in, well, we first saw them in, I think, the 9-minute trailer.
These are the guys dressed all in yellow, aren't they, Tabz?
Yeah, that's it. They are called mules. So, they just seem, they look humanoid, don't they? They look like they're human beings. This is a translation error because there was something that said about they have a delivery syndrome. I think what he was trying to say was that they have a way, an apparatus to detect cargo. So they're constantly going to be this pesky kind of force in the world that I don't know. I think we can presume they're dotted all over the place, different settlements, encampments. And if you go within a certain proximity to them, they'll be alerted to your cargo and then will set on you and try to take it by force. Literally, Kojima says that they'll try and steal everything, even the shoes off your feet. So they're obviously hardcore scavenger types. We even see this Mad Max style vehicle in the trailer. Perhaps just a little hint to that. And I'll be interested to find out more of them in the lore. They seem like an interesting faction. But yeah, they have sticky guns apparently to capture your cargo, which sounds really cool. They usually stick to their territory though, Kojima says, so you can actually get away from them quite easily as long as you get out of their proximity. You're done and you can do one. But I think again there's going to be this trade-off here that, like we said with the BTs and chiral crystals, mules tend to have loads of cargo at their base. And I can see there's going to be some specific missions where we have to go and retrieve a piece of cargo from the mules, perhaps as a main line and perhaps for prepper side stories as well. So yeah, just again another really interesting texturizer to the gameplay and the world.
It's interesting to note here as well that they are completely covered up. You don't see their faces at all. And I'm guessing that's how they're able to survive in the world. Everybody else we've seen in the world, such as us, Fragile, we've all got something wrong with us. We've got this dooms, whereas these are fully covered up, and I'm guessing that's how they're able to survive in the world. And we've also seen in that trailer that the combat is dynamic. I mean, there's a point in the trailer where he even throws some of his cargo to knock one of the people out, which is amazing.
Yeah.
The gameplay dynamics on this are just all over the place. There's so many different things and stuff you can do. It's amazing.
Yeah, no, definitely. I love that. That's a Kojimaism all over as well, isn't it? He loves to make things multifunctional, multi-use, just to create these emergent dynamics in a player's experience. So, yeah, all up for those.
Absolutely. Right, so you ready to move on to the next slide?
Well, the last thing I was just going to say in terms of the mules, because we do see him use this strand to tie one up. And I just thought that was interesting. I mean, we said in the last trailer, but I wonder if these strands will literally carry over asynchronously to other players. So if I tie up a mule with a strand in my game, will it tie up that same mule in your game for a temporary period of time?
Yeah,
and therefore, could you kind of coordinate these sieges on mules by helping, working with other players?
Yeah, I like it.
I think it'd be super cool. So I just wanted to get that in.
Yeah, really good. And, if there's an area someone's struggling with, you can go, "You're right, mate, can you help me do this? I'll take this guard out, you take that guard out, and we'll profit together," or whatever. It's brilliant.
Manage your resources together.
So, moving on. Third slide, we have got shoutouts.
Well, let's rattle through then. So, shoutouts. We've already mentioned Captain Level, and again, for his specific insights on Dooms and BTs, and how, of course, the body fluids work to weaponize against them. I think he said he's got a Japanese relative or a relative who's based in Japan. and knows some Japanese. So yeah, thanks Captain Level, really appreciate your insights there. It's helped us put all this together. Starman.
And then Mr. Death, he's contributed a lot in the comments and stuff. He's really excited for the game, and it's so awesome to see his excitement for the game. There's a lot of negativity out there about Death Stranding at the moment, certainly not from us. But you know, people's excitement for the game is what really spurs us on to make more Death Stranding content, and we're super excited for this game. So thanks ever so much, Mr. Death, for your comments.
Indeed. Jim D has just basically said he really likes our Death Stranding stuff, and he thinks it's some of the best Death Stranding stuff around. So that was lovely to hear. A real boost
really
for us.
Appreciate that, and like I just said, that's the kind of thing that helps us keep growing the channel, making all this content for you guys to enjoy.
Indeed, yeah, and you know, we were scared that we go on too much in these videos, but apparently as long as you guys keep enjoying it, we'll keep making it.
Yeah, this one's a long one.
Yeah, well, I'll try and take this chap's name. It's Rui. I just don't know how to pronounce your surname, Rui. Something like
PCOT, I would say, something like that.
Yeah, let's go with that. But thank you so much, Rui. You've told us you actually speak some Japanese, and
amazing.
Again, you touched upon asynchronous gameplay, the body fluids being weaponized, complex structures that we see, and again, we fed that all into this analysis and big info dump we've just done. So couldn't have done it without you. Thanks, Rui.
And then we've already mentioned him once already, but Aaron Pingle, he was the one that put us onto this, the first that we'd seen English subbed trailer, which was on the Lazuni channel, I believe it is.
I don't know if it's Lazuni or Izuni.
Oh, okay, Izuni. Oh, okay.
What we'll do, we'll take a screen crab. I've got Death Stranding on the brain. A screen grab, and
nice.
we'll flash it up on the channel so you guys can go and visit it if you so desire.
And we've already mentioned that he was put across the antimatter annihilation explosion theory, which we've fed back into the system, like we've said, and confirmed by Kojima. He understands, so that's really cool. Like I said, we've mentioned that earlier. Yeah. So yeah, really
Thanks,
appreciate
Aaron.
that, guys.
Yeah, thank you all our subscribers. There's plenty more out there, you know, specifically love Death Stranding. So sorry we didn't get a chance to mention you two, but please do drop us another message in the comments. Tell us what you thought on this video, what excites you, if you've had any new theories since. Always great to engage with you guys. Thanks so much.
Definitely. So moving on to, so we've done the shout outs, we're moving on to Breath of the Wild comparison and response to critics. Very important. Take it away, Tabz.
So basically, Rich and I have seen quite a bit of naysaying, you know, a divisive reaction in terms of the TGS trailers. People, again, shooting shots to say, oh, it's just a walking simulator, it's going to be really boring. And you see this throughout. Go on.
I think there was actually one person that I think you've seen, Tabz, that says there are no gameplay mechanics here at all.
Oh, well, yeah, that was just ludicrous. But I saw a YouTube video. Actually, they kind of... I follow a number of games YouTube creators. Video games YouTube creators, what I'm trying to say. And they have like a weekly podcast. And I won't name drop it because I don't want to start, you know, slinging mud pies at people. But essentially, the chap just said that there was no gameplay mechanics going on here. And, you know, there was no substance
Literally
in the game.
blows my mind.
Yeah, I mean, we couldn't get our head around it, but it's just really disappointing. I don't think it's what Kojima would want, you know. But then again, his whole marketing strategy has been very unorthodox, so maybe, you know, he's caused a bit of this himself. But Rich and I, we just want to get across how excited we still are for the game and how good we still think it will be. And a lot to that, Rich, was to do with the fact that we feel if you kind of just distill what we've seen so far, we think a lot of it is built upon the same foundations as Breath of the Wild on the Switch.
Yes.
Which, as we've said previously, probably our favourite game of all time. You know, we had an amazing weekend playing it together, and the whole experience of playing the game was fantastic. But the gist of it is that, well, first of all, it's the kind of go anywhere mechanic that was a big thing in Breath of the Wild. You can climb and basically go point to point wherever you want. You know, like in Death Stranding, there's going to be pitfalls along the way, there's going to be enemies, there's going to be challenges to surmount. But essentially, if you want to go to that mountain in the distance, you can get there and you can climb it as well. So obviously Death Stranding is a bit more of a simulator, a simulation game, insofar as it's more realistic, the graphics are, you know, more detailed, there's more mechanics and systems.
More adult themes, you would say?
Yeah, absolutely.
And a much more involved narrative than is in Breath of the Wild. But that's one of the things that we think's negative about Breath of the Wild. So, you know, if you took Breath of the Wild, which we think's one of the best games we've ever played, all of the things we love about it are sort of in Death Stranding, with all of the things that we didn't like so much about it, in theory, built upon. So why would this game be as bad as people are saying it's going to be? It makes no sense.
And just to stretch that point as well, you know, the other side of it was the asynchronous gameplay. Well, you can kind of analogize, if that's a word, I hope it is, that to Breath of the Wild, Rich. We loved playing it together and sharing the journey. Yes. Because you could go different directions and you would discover different things. And there was so much going on in the world, so much to be discovered, and so much kind of, the whole experience was about mastering this wild world. And doing that together and sharing it in forum was just such a joyous experience, to the point where sometimes you wished you could kind of play it together. And what? Go on, Rich, guess what?
You can on this game. That's
exactly.
The thing. The one thing that we loved the most about Breath of the Wild, when we had that weekend where we put 20 hours into each, you know, into your game, into my game, side by side, the best thing about it was going, mate, have you seen this? Have you done that? How'd you do that? Oh, I did it like this. But we can do this in the game this time.
And even Tile Island as well, you know, that was...
Yes, brilliant. You know, amazing. So I don't know why people would be so downtrodden on this. I get that it's potentially a completely new, although it's a completely new genre. That's what Kojima's saying, although there's people I've seen that we spoke about today that are saying that that's nonsense as well. It's not a completely new genre at all. But, you know, I think maybe people don't like change, people don't like the way Kojima's presenting it, but we're loving the looks of it, and we are no way on board with the people that were saying that this is going to be rubbish. So hopefully we're not proven wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's going to be stuff in here that, you know, you can give and take. I don't think that's the right word, what I'm trying to say. I think there's stuff in here that you know, it's going to be optional. And there's going to be some things which I don't like about the game and I won't really get too involved with. And similarly for Rich. But I think Kojima will have still built a game that is accessible to all. And, you know, as we pointed out, there's just... fundamentally, the best things about the game seem to be built on a similar foundation to Breath of the Wild. So I just can't see how this is going to be a poor experience. And I'm just hoping that it's going to change everybody's minds on release and, you know, catch fire, much in the way Breath of the Wild did. It kind of... people were excited for it, but it kind of lit up the industry in a way that we haven't seen from a game in a long time. So I hope it does that.
And the other thing to say on that is, obviously, you know, the game's going to get reviewed by, you know, everybody. People are going to say what they think about the game. Well, Kojima's actually said that the game, and this is almost a bit of an own goal for him, he's said the game, the second half of the game is much more fun to play. Now, I look at that and think that's probably because the start of the game is quite a grindy aspect. You're having to find your way in the world. But I do hope that if that is the case, the people that do the reviews and put the reviews out there, they do play the whole game to ensure that, maybe, as Kojima said, the second half of the game, which maybe really brings the game into fruition, they actually play that bit of the game.
Well, this is the thing. This is where media can do it a disservice, because media, they have to kind of package things briefly, don't they, and capture your attention with a headline. And things can be kind of communicated in a very binary way. And you could take it one way and say, oh, well, great, well, I'm going to buy a game which doesn't get good until the first 25 hours. Or you can actually break that down and think about it more realistically. Well, let's look at Breath of the Wild. That first, the Great Plateau experience, Rich. And just as you're, what's the word? Ingratiating yourself with the world, as you're getting used to the systems, the dynamics, the mechanics. It's difficult, isn't it? It's a challenging experience that, you know, could put some people off because it can become overwhelming. So I think that's
Yeah.
all that Kojima's saying, that there's an initial kind of learning curve that you have to get used to, and then it gets fun.
And I was actually speaking literally yesterday about the recently released Link's Awakening, the remake. That game is like brilliantly fun straight off the bat. You're in there, it's really well presented, it's easy mechanics, you're into it, there's no overwhelming gameplay dynamics, it's really easy to play. Whereas Breath of the Wild, the game we absolutely love, we hold it up as the greatest game of all time at the moment on the channel. The first like 4 or 5 hours, you think it's a good game, but you're not blown over by it. You just think it's a good game. But then it comes into its own. You get off the plateau, you start exploring the world, you realise this go anywhere, do anything, see what you want to see, take as much or as little in as you want. It comes into its own, it flourishes, it becomes the greatest game of all time. Whereas maybe Death Stranding's a little bit like that. Maybe that's what Kojima's referring to. So it's interesting, and I hope that doesn't feed in negatively to the reviews in the coming months.
Yeah, it's a grower, not a shower. Maybe is
potentially.
It's what he's getting at with that.
Right,
so
let's move on to theories. Multiverse. Tabz, go.
Okay, I'll try and package it up as quickly as I can. So the multiverse theory was basically something I said to Rich ages ago when this game was first being kind of hinted at. And I was thinking, well, is Sam this sort of cosmic courier? This sort of interdimensional courier? So the world we see that Sam inhabits is actually like a hub world which connects a number of different universes. And that, for example, each prepper base and settlement is actually like these holographic avatars we see actually act as like portals to these other dimensions. So my theory was perhaps is there something going on there, and that obviously factors into the fact that multiple players can play asynchronously. Surely the game at some point is going to address the elephant in the room that there are multiple Sams in the world, and each Sam is kind of aware of the other Sams because obviously we're playing together asynchronously. So this kind of multiverse theory I had, it's really interesting. And I love the idea of Sam as this cosmic courier, going from avatar to avatar, being the kind of, I don't know if harbinger's the right word, or, kind of a messenger of all the, the people left in this world or left off in other planets, other dimensions. It's a great idea, but I think we can probably put it down now, just because we've had Kojima say stuff about people being in bunkers under the ground in basements or whatever, and therefore kind of pulls the rug on that theory. But maybe there's still something to it. Who knows? We'll have to see. Done.
And then strands. Now this is a theory I had. I actually came up with this today. We've heard so the briefing trailer, if you've seen that, Amelie refers herself as Amelie America Strand, and she refers to herself as being on the beach and that she hasn't aged at all. Sam also refers to himself as, he says something along the lines of, I'm not a Strand anymore, I'm Sam Bridges, or he says something like that. So I've had this theory that strands refer to people who are able to interact in the world, but they're not really in the real world. They reside in the upside down world, the death world. Yeah,
they've lost their physical presence in the world and are somehow stranded in the Death Stranding, I suppose. But yet they can still reach into our world. Literally Amelie seems to embody that, doesn't she?
Yes, and I think that when Sam refers to himself as I'm not a Strand anymore, I wonder whether they chirally 3D printed his body, and then they took him out of the Strand world, the upside down world, the downstairs world, and then put him in this body, and that's why he refers to himself as I'm not a Strand anymore. So that's a really interesting theory, and we'll have to see how that plays out and see how these strands refer to things, but I wonder whether that is the case.
Yeah, I love it, Rich. I mean, this whole naming thing has been baffling, hasn't it? Sam Porter Bridges, Amelie, they talk about in the briefing trailer renaming her Samantha America Strand.
Oh, that's it. Yes, sorry, yes. Yeah, I got it
so
wrong.
Yeah, so that's the reference, isn't it, that made you think, I wonder, what that means. And it certainly, it would be very interesting, wouldn't it, if Sam was somehow stranded, they've printed in this body, and maybe that is in some way how they can explain the whole, multiple Sams in different universes thing.
Yeah.
And the asynchronous gameplay. Who knows? But I definitely think it's, again, another interesting theory, which we'll have to see if it plays out.
So next up we have the next weekend. Go Tabz.
Well, we've already kind of alluded to this, and what a great weekend we had playing Zelda Breath of the Wild together. So it was really just to keep the Barcadians abreast of the fact that we do intend to play this together. We're booked a weekend out. We're going to set a couple of screens up, aren't we, Rich?
We are, yes.
And hope my rubbish internet connection can support asynchronous gameplay dynamics.
Yes. Yeah, basically. And we're hoping to have a equally as awesome weekend as we did that time playing Breath of the Wild. It's not going to be the weekend of release because I'm away that weekend. It'll be the following weekend, but it's all right because, as you can see here, Tabz will be dropping an unboxing of the collector's edition on the Monday after release.
Indeed, as long as I get it and they don't cancel the pre-order.
Yeah.
But
I know you're a little bit worried about that, but I think you'll be fine, Tabz. I think they'd have said by now if you were struggling.
Yeah, fingers crossed. That'll just keep us keep the buzz and us afloat on the channel in terms of Death Stranding. But stay tuned to. We'll try and get some capture maybe of the weekend.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it might be cool to show literally a split screen on a video of us tackling the same thing.
Yeah.
The same boss or whatever, literally top screen, bottom screen, and you can literally see us do that together, playing asynchronously, I guess.
Yeah, get a few reactions from us, and then at some point down the line, I'm sure we'll do some sort of a organic review together as well.
Absolutely. And I think that's probably most of what you're going to see from us from Death Stranding now, because I don't think we're going to see too much more from Kojima before release. We're 6 weeks out from release, something like that.
And I think it's time to jump on the Last of Us hype train, isn't it, from what we're seeing?
It is. Yes, because I believe a few days after we're filming this, there's going to be a Last of Us State of Play, and there'll be that to talk about, so that's really cool. So I know there is a potential that Kojima's got something planned in October, I think October 5th, but we're not entirely certain what that is and what that's going to entail, so we'll wait to see whether there's anything else comes out between now and release, and we look forward to it.
Absolutely. So I think that's probably about it, is it, Rich? Nothing else you want to mention?
No,
Thank you, everybody, for staying with us. If you're still watching, I know it's a long video and it shatters us out. I'm ready for a lie down, Rich. I don't know about you, but we wanted to cover off as much as we got from this new trailer. So thanks again for tuning in. If you do like the video, please give us a like. Really helps to support and grow the channel, and a dislike if you didn't, because we appreciate the feedback. But also just drop us a comment to tell us what didn't work so well, so we can look to improve. If you enjoy what you're seeing from Rich and I and you want to see more, then don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell for notifications. And I think that's probably about it. Another one for the archives.
Stamped and completed.